Many Americans do not fully realize how perilous the times were for our nation in the late summer of 1814. Just 3 decades after the American Revolution, hostilities with Great Britain had erupted again in what we call the War of 1812. 2 years into the conflict, the Americans were getting the worst of it. Attempts to invade British-controlled Canada had forced Great Britain to the negotiating table had been disastrous. Moreover, British forces, along with their Native American allies, had taken full control of Detroit. And worst of all, the British had successfully stormed Washington, D.C. and set fire to several public buildings, including the Capitol and the White House. President James Madison had been forced to flee to safety in nearby Brookville, Maryland. It was a low, low point for the still very young United States. And then came the Battle of Baltimore. Baltimore was the third largest city in the United States. It was a crucial port city whose loss would have been devastating to the American cause. About 5,000 British troops marched toward the city on land. 19 British warships stood menacingly just outside Baltimore Harbor with their sights set on Fort McHenry. By happenstance, on one of the British ships was a Baltimore lawyer named Francis Scott Key. He was there to help negotiate the release of an American prisoner. His efforts had been successful, but with the looming battle, the British would not let him disembark until after the fray. So, lawyer, author, and poet Francis Scott Key had a front row seat for the pivotal battle of Fort McHenry. Stationed at Fort McHenry were 1,000 men under the control of Major General George Armistead. Soaring above the fort was a huge American flag, measuring 30 by 42 feet. Its brilliance could be seen for miles around. Charred debris from a burned-out White House, perhaps still smoldering less than 50 miles away, the bombardment of Fort McHenry began. It was shortly before 6:30 a.m., September 13, 1814, and what followed was 25 hours of bombs bursting in air. The Americans returned fire, but did limited damage. The warships were too far away from their cannonballs to reach their mark. Perhaps the soldiers were more effective in thumbing their noses at the British. The fife and drum corps inside the fort played Yankee Doodle Dandy, and the men sent up 3 cheers of defiance. the smoky mist, you could see the flashes of cannon fire. Could anyone withstand this fury? Aboard the cruise ship, Francis Scott Key could not be sure. He waited anxiously, realizing that the fate of the fort, the fate of Baltimore, and perhaps the fate of the nation itself depended on the outcome. Was the fort still standing? Was the flag still soaring? Was the nation still surviving? 2 miles away, by the dawn's early light, Francis Scott Key saw it. There it was, a huge symbol of freedom, rippling in the breeze, glinting in the morning sun, triumphant through the perilous fight. Still there was she, and so gallantly streaming. Quickly, Francis Scott Key searched for something on which to write. He took out a letter from his pocket, turned it over to the backside, and the words of a poem began to flow from his mind, through his heart, and onto the paper. And thus was born our national anthem. Other musical pieces have been suggested as better choices for a national anthem, but none have touched American hearts and minds and spirits like the Star-Spangled Banner. So when she is played, stand, take off your hat, salute if you are or have been in the military. Place your hand over your heart if you have not so served. That flag still continues to awaken the best within us, demand the best from us, and summon the